So the program we'll be doing is enriching our focus, our memory, our life in remembering the activities of the Supreme Person that will give joy to the heart. So let us read one of Lord Krishna's unlimited eternal activities and pastimes. The battle between Salva and the members of the Yadu dynasty. While Sukadev Goswami was narrating various activities of Lord Krishna in playing the role of an ordinary human being, he also narrated the history of the battle between the dynasty of Yadu and the demon by the name of Salva. Salva, who had managed to possess a wonderful airship named Sauba. King Salva was a great friend of Sisupala's. When Sisupala went to marry Rukmini, Salva was one of the members of the bride's groom party. When there was a fight between the soldiers of the Yadu dynasty and the kings of the opposite side, Salva was defeated by the soldiers of the Yadu dynasty. But despite his defeat, he made a promise before all the kings that he would in the future rid the whole world of all the members of the Yadu dynasty. Since his defeat in the fight during the marriage of Rukmini, he had maintained within himself an unforgettable envy of Lord Krishna. And he was in fact a fool because he had promised to kill Krishna. Usually such foolish demons take shelter of demigods like Lord Shiva to execute their ulterior plans. And so Salva, in order to get the strength, took shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Shiva. He underwent a severe type of austerity, during which he would eat no more than a handful of ashes daily. Lord Shiva was the husband of Parvati. He is generally very merciful. He becomes very quickly satisfied if someone undertakes severe austerities in order to please him. So after continued austerities by Salva for 1 year, Lord Shiva became pleased with him and asked him to beg for fulfillment of his desires. Salva begged from Lord Shiva the gift of an airplane which could be so strong that it could not be destroyed by any demigod, demons, human being, Gandharvas, Naga, or even by any Rakshasa. However, he desired that the airplane be able to fly anywhere and everywhere. He would like to pilot it and be specifically very dangerous and fearful to the dynasty of the Yadus. Lord Shiva immediately agreed to give him the benediction. And Salva took the help of the demon Maya to manufacture this iron airplane, which was so strong and formidable that no one could crush it. It was a very big machine, almost like a big city, and it could fly so high at such a great speed that it was almost impossible to see where it was, and so that there was no question of attacking it. Although it might be dark outside, the pilot could fly it anywhere and everywhere. Having acquired such a wonderful airplane, Salva flew it to the city of Dwarka because his main purpose is obtaining the airplane. In obtaining the airplane was to attack the city of the Yadus, towards whom he had maintained a continual feeling of animosity. Salva does not only attack the city of Dwarka from the sky, but he also surrounded the city by large number of infantry. The soldiers on the surface began to attack the beautiful spots of the city. They began to destroy the baths, the city gates, the palaces, and the skyscraper houses. The high walls around the city and the beautiful spot where people would gather for recreation. While the soldiers were attacking on the surface, the airplane began to drop big slabs of stone, tree trunks, thunderbolts, poisonous snakes, and so many other dangerous things. Salva also managed to create such a strong whirlwind within the city that all of Dwarka became dark. Because of the dust that covered the sky, the airplane occupied by Salva put the entire city of Dwarka into distress, equal to that caused on the earth long ago by the disturbing activities of Tripurasura. The inhabitants of Dwarka Puri became so harassed that they were not in a peaceful condition even for a moment. The great heroes of Dwarka, headed by the commanders such as Pradyumna, counterattacked the soldiers and the airplane of Salva. When he saw the extreme distress of the citizen, Pradyumna immediately arranged his soldier and personally got upon a chariot, encouraging the citizen by assuring safety. Following his command, many warriors like Satyaki, Karudisna, and Samba, all young brothers of Pradyumna, as well as Akrura, Kritabarma, Banubinda, Gada, Sukha, and Sarana, all came out of the city to fight with Salva. All of them were great fighters. Each one could fight with thousands of men. All were fully equipped with necessary weapons and assisted by hundreds and thousands of charioteers, elephants, horses, and infantry soldiers. Fierce fighting began between the two parties, exactly as was formerly carried on between the demigods and the demons. The fighting was very severe, and whoever observed the fierce nature of the fight felt his hair stand on end. Pradyumna immediately counteracted the mystic demonstration occasioned by the airplane of Salva, the king of Sauba. By the mystic power of the airplane, Salva had created a darkness as dense as night. But Pradyumna all of a sudden appeared like the rising sun. As with the rising of the sun, the darkness of night is immediately dissipated. So with the appearance of Pradyumna, the power exhibited by Salva became null and void. Each and every one of Pradyumna's arrow had a golden feather at the end, and the shaft was fitted with sharp iron edge. By releasing 25 such arrows, Pradyumna severely injured Salva's commander-in-chief. He then released another 100 arrows towards the body of Salva. After this, he pierced each and every soldier by releasing one arrow, and he killed the chariot drivers by firing 10 arrows at each one of them. The carriers, like the horses and elephants, were killed by the release of 3 arrows directed towards each one of them. When everyone present on the battlefield saw the wonderful feat of Pradyumna, the great fighters on both sides began to praise his acts of chivalry. But still, the airplane, occupied by Salva, was very mysterious. It was so extraordinary that sometimes there would appear to be many airplanes in the sky, and sometimes it would be seen that there was none. Sometimes it was visible, and sometimes it was not visible. And the warriors of the Yadu dynasty became puzzled about the whereabouts of this peculiar airplane. Sometimes they would see the airplane on the ground, and sometimes they would see it flying in the sky. Sometimes they would see the airplane resting on the peak of a hill, and sometimes it was seen floating on the water. The wonderful airplane was flying in the sky like a firefly in the wind. It was not steady even for a moment. But despite the mysterious maneuvering of the airplane, the commanders and soldiers of the Yadu dynasty would immediately rush toward Salva, wherever he was present with his airplane and soldiers. The arrows released by the dynasty of the Yadus were as brilliant as the sun and dangerous as the tongues of serpents. All the soldiers fighting on behalf of Salva became soon distressed by the incessant release of arrows upon them by the heroes of the Yadu dynasty. And Salva himself became unconscious from the attack of these arrows. The soldiers and fighters fighting on behalf of Salva were also very strong, and the release of their warriors also harassed the heroes of the Yadu dynasty. But still, the Yadus were so strong and determined that they did not move from their strategic positions. The heroes of the Yadu dynasty were determined to either die in the battlefield or gain victory. They were confident of the fact that if they would die in fighting, they would attain a heavenly planet. And if they would come out victorious, they would enjoy the world. The name of Salva's commander-in-chief was Juman. He was very powerful. And although beaten by 25 of Pradyuma's arrow, he suddenly attacked Pradyuma with his fierce club and struck him so strongly that Pradyuma became unconscious. Immediately there was a roaring. Now he is dead! Now he is dead! The force of the club on the chest of Pradyuma was very severe, enough to tear asunder the chest of an ordinary man. Pradyuma's chariot was being driven by the son of Daruka. According to Vedic military principles, the chariot driver and the hero on the chariot had to cooperate during the fighting. As such, it was the duty of the chariot driver to take care of the hero on the chariot during the dangerous and precarious fighting on the battlefield. Thus Daruka removed the body of Pradyuma from the battlefield. 2 hours later, in a quiet place other than the battlefield, he addressed the charioteer and condemned him. Oh, you have done the most abominable act. Why have you moved me from the battlefield? My dear charioteer, I have never heard that anyone in our family was ever removed from the battlefield. None of them left the battlefield while fighting. By this removal, you have overburdened me with great defamation. It will be said that I left the battlefield whilst fighting was going on. My dear charioteer, I must accuse you. You are a coward and emasculator. Tell me, how can I go before my uncle Balaram and before my father Krsna? And what shall I say before them? Everyone will talk about me and say that I fled from the fighting place. And if they play jokes upon me with sarcastic words, my dear hero, how have you become such a coward? How have you become an eunuch? How have you become so low in the eyes of the fighters who oppose you? I think, my dear charioteer, that you have committed a great offense by removing me from the battlefield. The charioteer of Pradyuma replied, My dear sir, I wish a long life for you. I think I did not do anything wrong, as it is the duty of the charioteer to help the fighter in the chariot while he is in a very precarious condition. My dear sir, you are completely competent in the battlefield activities. It is the mutual duty of the charioteer and the warrior to give protection to each other in a precarious condition. A very dangerous situation. I was completely aware of the regulative principles of fighting, and I did my duty. The enemy all of a sudden struck you with his club so severely that you lost consciousness. You were in a dangerous position, surrounded by your enemies. Therefore, I was obliged to act as I did. So let's continue the next chapter, the next part. The deliverance of Salva. After talking with his charioteer, the son of Daruka, Pradyuma, could understand the real circumstances, and therefore he refreshed himself by washing his mouth and hands. Arming himself properly with bows and arrow, he asked his charioteer to take him near the place where Salva's commander-in-chief was standing. During the short absence of Pradyuma from the battlefield, Juman, Salva's commander-in-chief, had been taking over the position of the soldiers of the Yadu dynasty. By appearing in the battlefield, Pradyuma immediately stopped him and struck him with 8 arrows. With 4 arrows, he killed his 4 horses. With 1 arrow, he killed his chariot driver. And with 1 arrow, he cut the bow into 2. With another arrow, he cut his plug into pieces. With another, he severed his head from his body. So he cut his the head of the commander-in-chief of Salva. On the other fronts, heroes like Gada, Satyaki, and Samba were engaged in killing the soldiers of Salva. The soldiers who were staying with Salva in the airplane were also killed in the fighting, and they fell into the ocean. Each party began to strike the opposite party very severely. The battle was fierce and dangerous and continued for 27 days without stop. While the fight was going on in the city of Dwarka, Krishna was staying at Indraprastha along with the Pandavas and King Yudhishthira. This fighting with Salva took place after the Rajasuya Yajna had been performed by King Yudhishthira and after the killing of Sisupala. When Lord Krishna understood that there was great danger in the city of Dwarka, he took permission from the elderly members of the Pandava family, especially from his aunt Kunti Devi, and started immediately for Dwarka. Lord Krishna began to think that while he was arriving in Hastinapura with Balaram after the killing of Sisupala, Sisupala's men have attacked Dwarka. On reaching Dwarka, Lord Krishna saw that the whole city was greatly endangered. He placed Balaram Ji in a strategic position for protection of the city, and he himself as his charioteer Daruka. The son of Daruka, Juman, is the chariot driver of Pradyumna, the son of Lord Krishna. Yeah? He himself asked his charioteer Daruka to prepare to start. He said, Daruka, please immediately take me to where Salva is staying. You may know that this Salva is a very powerful, mysterious man. Don't fear him in the least. As soon as he got his order from Lord Krishna, Daruka had him seated on the chariot and drove very quickly towards Salva. The chariot of Lord Krishna was marked with a flag bearing the insignia of Garuda. And as soon as the soldier and warriors of the Yadu dynasty saw the flag, they could understand that Lord Krishna was on the battlefield. By this time, almost all the soldiers of Salva had been killed. But when Salva saw that Krishna had come to the battlefield, he released a great powerful weapon which flew to the sky with a roaring sound like a great meteor. It was so bright that the whole sky lit up by its presence. But as soon as Lord Krishna appeared, he tore the great weapon into hundreds and thousands of pieces by releasing his own arrow. Lord Krishna struck Salva with 16 arrows, and with a shower of arrows, he overpowered the airplane, just as the sun in a clear sky overpowers the whole sky by an unlimited numbers of molecules and sunshine. Salva struck a severe blow on Krishna's left side, where Lord was carrying his bow Saranga. As a result, the Saranga bow fell from Lord Krishna's hand. This dropping of the bow was indeed wonderful. Great personalities and demigods were observing the fighting between Salva and became perturbed by this, and they began to claim, Alas, alas! Salva thought that he had become victorious, and with a roaring sound began to address Lord Krishna as follows. You rascal Krishna, you kidnapped Rukmini forcibly. Even in her presence, you baffled my friend Sisupala and married Rukmini yourself. And in the great assembly of King Yudhishthira Rajasuya Yajna, while my friend Sisupala was a little absent-minded, you took an opportunity to kill him. Everyone thinks that you are a great fighter and that no one can conquer you. So now you have to prove your strength. I think that if you stand before me any longer with my sharpened arrows, I shall send you to the place wherefrom you will never return. So arrogant, huh? So Lord Krishna replied, Foolish Salva, you're talking nonsensically. You do not know that the moment of death is already upon your head. Those who are actually heroes do not talk much. They prove their prowess by practical exhibition of chivalrous activities. After this, Lord Krishna, in great anger, struck Salva on the collarbone with his club so severely that he began to bleed internally and tremble as if he were going to collapse from a severe cold. Before Krishna was able to strike him again, however, Salva became invisible by his mystic power. Within a few moments, a mysterious unknown man came before Lord Krishna. Crying loudly, he bowed down at the Lord's lotus feet and said to him, Since you are the most beloved son of your father Vasudeva, Your mother Devaki has sent me to inform you of an unfortunate news that your father had been arrested by Salva and taken away by force. He took him just as a butcher mercilessly takes away an animal. When Lord Krishna heard this unfortunate news from the unknown man, he at first became most perturbed, just like an ordinary human being. His face showed signs of grief, and he began to cry a piteous tone. How could this happen? My brother Lord Balaram is there, and it is impossible for anyone to conquer Balaramaji. He's in charge of Dwarka city, and I know he's always alert. How could Salva possibly enter the city and arrest my father in that way? Whatever he may be, Salva's power is limited. So how could it be possible that he has conquered the strength of Balaramaji and taken away my father, arresting him as described by this man? Alas, destiny is after all very powerful. When Sri Krishna was thinking like this, Salva brought before him in custody a man exactly resembling Vasudeva, his father. These were all creation of his mystic power, the mystic power of Salva. While Sri Krishna was thinking like this, Salva brought before him in custody a man exactly resembling Vasudeva, his father. These were all creation of the mystic power of Salva. Salva began to address Krishna. You rascal, Krishna, look, this is your father, who had begotten you and by whose mercy you are still living. Now just see how I kill your father. If you have any strength, try to save him. The mystic juggler Salva, speaking in this way before Lord Krishna, immediately cut off the head of the false Vasudeva. Without hesitation, he took away the dead body and got to his airplane. Lord Krishna is the self-sufficient, Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yet because he was playing the role of an ordinary human being, he became very depressed for a moment, as if he had actually lost his father. But at the next moment, he could understand the arrest and killing of his father were a demonstration of the mystic power which Salva had learned from the demon Maya. Coming to his right consciousness, he could see that there was no messenger, no head of his father, but that only Salva had left in his airplane, which was flying in the sky, and he began to think of slaying Salva. Krishna's reaction is a controversial point among great authorities and saintly persons. How could Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the reservoir of all power and knowledge, be bewildered in such a way? Lamentation, aggrievement, and bewilderment are characteristic of persons who are conditioned souls. But how can such things affect the person of the Supreme, who is full of knowledge, power, and all opulence? Actually, it is not possible at all that Lord Krishna was misled by the mystic jugglery of Salva. He was displaying his pastimes in playing the role of an ordinary human being. Great saintly persons and sages who are engaged in devotional service of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who have thus achieved the greatest perfection of self-realization, have transcended the bewilderments of bodily concept of life. Lord Krishna is the ultimate goal of life for such saintly person. How then could Krishna have been bewildered by the mystic jugglery of Salva? The conclusion is that Lord Krishna's bewilderment was another opulence of his Supreme Personality. When Salva thought that Krishna had been bewildered by his mystic representation, he became encouraged and began to attack the Lord with great strength and energy by showering volumes of arrows upon him. But the enthusiasm of Salva can be compared to the speedy march of flies into a fire. Lord Krishna, by hurling his arrows with unfathomable strength, injured Salva, whose armor and bow and jeweled helmet all scattered into pieces. With a crushing blow from Krishna's club, Salva's wonderful airplane burst into pieces and fell into the sea. Salva was very careful. Instead of crashing with the airplane, he managed to jump onto the land. He again rushed towards Lord Krishna. When Salva ran swiftly to attack Krishna with his club, Lord Krishna cut off his hand, which fell to the ground with the club. Finally, deciding to kill him, Lord Krishna took up his wonderful dish, Sudarsana Chakra, which was shining like a brilliant sun at the time of the dissolution of the material creation. When Lord Krishna stood up with his dish to kill Salva, he appeared just like the red sun rising over the mountain. Lord Krishna cut off his head, and the head with its hearing and helmet fell on the ground. Salva was thus killed in the same way as Britasura was killed by Indra, the king of heaven. So, with Lord Krishna's weapon, the sharpened dish, Sudarshan Chakra, he cut the head of Salva. When Salva was killed, all his soldiers and followers began to cry, "Alas, alas!" While Salva's men were thus crying, the demigods from the heavenly planets showered flowers on Krishna and announced the victory by beating on drums and blowing bugles. At this very moment, other friends of Sisupala, such as Dantabakra, appeared on the scene to fight with Krishna in order to avenge the death of Sisupala. When Dantabakra appeared before Lord Krishna, he was extremely angry. Thus end of Bhaktivedanta purport of the 3rd volume, 8th chapter of Krishna, the deliverance of Salva. So Salva was killed, but his friends came back. So we'll read the continuation of this transcendental, wonderful pastime of Krishna's wonderful activities. The Supreme Personality of Godhead tomorrow will continue tomorrow. Okay? So let's have a chant. Namo Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Gora Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prastate Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shadvaita Garada Shibasadigo Bhakta Brindam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinobandhu Jagad Pate Gopesa Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namusate. Harbol Namaste.
Hare Krishna. Namo Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Gora Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prasthaya